Just some things that you'll want to be aware of. So we have our vendors that we're so glad to have here. We've got the craft shop, Annie Gardner from Blackfoot, and she will accept Cash Card, Apple Pay, Venmo. You got it, she'll take it. And then Tamara Jolly with her hem stitching in the back, of course, she is taking cash and checks today. And our third vendor, Hazel Vermosh from Vintage Store, was not able to make it due to weather, so she was borders and bindings tomorrow. And she is so sad and so mad at the weather. But she did send me a box of stuff to set out. So on the purple shelf in the back room there are a bunch of samples that Hazel made. She sells the most fun binding and rickracky things. So there's lots of samples of her stuff that she's made back there. And there's a little basket that has some plastic baggies that has 2-yard samples in it. So you're welcome to take one of those. If it runs out the little basket, let me know. I do have some more that I can put in there. It's very fun. So she lives in Salt Lake. She has, it's out. Okay, I'll fill it up as soon as Amanda starts. She has an Etsy shop and she has a card back there, and so you can order all of her stuff online, and it is the cutest. Okay, so then we have our Quilts of Valor block drawing. So if you have brought in Quilts of Valor blocks, thank you. If you would like to bring in some, for every 5 blocks you bring in, you will get a raffle ticket, and the raffle is for that fun box on the octagonal table back there. It is full of fun things donated from Ollie and Evie, So Fun Quilting, The Craft Shop, Daydreams, Vintage Door, Tamara Jolly, and Granny's Fabric House. It is full of fun. So there are also patterns back on that table that you can take home and whip up some blocks tonight and bring them back. Some of them are really quick. There's a 9-patch. And then you can bring them back tomorrow, and we'll get you in for the drawing for that. Also for Quilts of Valor, there is a Quilts of Valor request form. If you know somebody who has served in our military that you would like to honor with a quilt, there is a form to you can take to fill out there and get it to Mimi Jones. Let's see. Oh, with the craft shop, the more you buy today, the more fun things she'll bring tomorrow. So you can spend more money and increase. I called it, like we call it, a fabric stash, but somebody called it a fabric pantry, and it just sounds less corny. So you can fill your fabric pantry, because we all like to have full pantries. And it's 40% off back there, so be sure to do that. These books are all free on this table. They need to be gone today because they will not be back tomorrow. We're going to use the table for something else tomorrow. And then there's also a purple cart back by the doors. Back there, my Disney is coming out. I can't point with one finger. There's a purple cart back there that has more books on it. Those ones are for donation. And also, if you just want to give the library a donation, that's always appreciated. There's a QR code to the Friends of Library Venmo on that octagonal podium as well. Okay, last 2 more things. Okay, the library also has their home and garden tips classes that are going. The next one's on February 25th. So they can get you a flyer for this if you're interested in gardening tips. If you made this Quilts of Valor block, let me know who you are so I can get your name in the drawing. It's beautiful, but there's a bunch of them, they weren't labeled. And Peggy Denton has a Grace long arm quilt frame and a Janome 160p machine. She is selling $2,000 or best offer. There is a purple flyer for that on the entrance podium, and make sure that you're signing in both days so that the library can get a count of who is coming to their events. Okay, that's all I have. So now we can get to fun stuff. Amanda Garcia is going to be doing our introduction to foundation paper piecing, which is a much requested class, so this will be fun. Amanda is a stay-at-home mom, part-time substitute teacher, and a hobby homesteader. She has been quilting for 10 years and foundation paper piecing for 9. She loves to sew for holidays and family. Thank you for coming, Amanda.
Hi, yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Marie Garcia.
Like I was just introduced, I've been sewing for 10 years because my son is 11. And when I was able to stay home with him, I wanted to make things for his toddler bed. So that's how I got started. One of the very first things I ever paper pieced was this ghost because I like to jump in head first. And after doing a simple 9-patch, I was like, I can make a ghost. And if you look really closely, I missed some of the spots and you can see through him. But here he is, and this is what sparked my love. I made him right off the bat, first try, and I never looked back for years. I've done almost only foundation paper piecing. What is foundation paper piecing? Foundation paper piecing is printing your pattern and sewing over the paper with your fabric so that when you finish, you have exact and precise blocks that match up every single time. Yeah. I made this sample and I have, scraps all over my room, and I said, oh, Peter Rabbit has to be in the doorway of my house, so there's Peter stealing some radishes. Why would you do paper piecing? I do it because I love the complexity. I can make ghosts. I can make great white sharks. I can make squirrels. I can make little elves. I'll put these all up in a bed. I can make fireworks. I can make baseball shirts. And these things are complicated. You couldn't do this with traditional piecing and still have the accuracy. So that was a baseball shirt, and here are my Super Bowl, last year's Super Bowl, the 49ers and the Chiefs from last year. So precision and exactness, complexity, and also the ability to fussy cut. Here. So every single one of these blocks has a fussy cut of a Christmas icon in the middle. And I'm a really big fussy cut fan, so that was my biggest thing. Okay, tools. A lot of people think that you have to have special tools, and you don't. You don't. So I think I listed it on here. A ruler with a clearly marked 1/4 inch. So this is a regular old ruler. This is the 1/4 inch plus by Riley Blake Designs. And the reason I love this one is because can you see the blue 1/4 inch stands out? And that's so easy. So when we foundation paper piece, we trim our 1/4 inch after we sew. And that gives us 100% accurate seams every single time. They make an add a 1/4 plus. This is this guy right here. And the reason why a lot of people like him is because he has a lip. So when you pull it up to anything, it lines straight up and you get a 1/4 inch. So there are options. You can buy something specific, or you can use any ruler with a clearly defined 1/4 inch. I will pass these around. A bright light. So I don't know if you've ever heard of people saying, oh, you have to have a light box. You don't. Sometimes I hold it up to my window. If you're in a building with fluorescent lights, all you have to do is hold it up. I have an alt light in my room that mimics natural light, and so that's what I use. I just point it this way so I can look straight into it. So that's why I wrote bright light, because you don't need a special tool. You just need to be able to see through your pattern. I'll talk about the papers that we're going to use in a little bit, but anything you can see through is going to work just fine. A glue stick or flat-headed pins. When you are first starting, nothing is attached to your paper. So it's a little bit easy for the very first step to have it secured. So that's what I did with the doors, especially when I want to fussy cut somebody like Peter. So just a tiny dot of glue so that he stays there while I add everything around. Rotary cutter, we should all have those, right? So next I'm going to talk about the different types of paper that you would print on, because this is all before we even get started. My first example is the brown foundation paper piecing sheet. That's this guy here. I'll pass these around too, so everybody will get to feel them. These are sold specifically for foundation paper piecing. They come in the size 8.5 by 11, so they fit straight into your printer. They print well, and the printer can suck them up no problem. These are definitely a plus. Then I have my cheap printer paper. I've seen people print on high quality glossy paper, and that's not what you want. We're not trying to keep the paper, and we don't want to add extra thickness. So when I say cheap, I just mean the regular old run-of-the-mill, whatever's cheapest at sometimes I get it at the grocery store. Then I have my Stitch and Sew that I bought. They sell this for foundation paper piecing, and it goes through the printer all right. I don't know if you can see, but the ink doesn't take as well. But this does provide a little bit more structure, and they say it's easier on your needles because it's a woven. It's a little bit harder to pull off, but. And then we're here at the Quilter Select. This is an even thicker piece. And I don't know if you guys can see, it's harder to see through too. So those are options of different kinds of paper. I'll pass this around so that you can look, but I recommend the brown paper or cheap printer paper. Honestly, there's no reason to spend money on, this was like $20 per package, and they don't rip off well. You can't see through them very well. So regular old printer paper or the brown foundation paper piecing paper. I use the cheap printer paper because it's accessible. Somebody recently, because everybody knows that I love to paper piece, somebody donated 1,000 sheets of these to me from their stash. So now I sew with those because that's what I have. But before, for years, every single one of these was all the cheap printer paper.
I've used vellum or like onion skin paper too, and it's like where you sew on the seam cracks and pulls out really easy too.
Yes.
But it's more expensive.
Yes, and it is like it's like newsprint or like with the children practice writing. They do. I have some of that paper. It's not the right size though, but yes. So that'll come around, and I'll give you some of this on this side too to look at. But it's cheap. This one is cheap. Not as cheap as printer paper, but it's easily accessible.
You can get that newsprint on Amazon, 500 sheets for $12.
500 sheets for $12 on Amazon. Yeah, great.
Can you repeat the question for you? Some people online can hear.
Yes, I can repeat the questions. One lady over here was talking about onion skin or vellum paper, also works, and it turns off really well. And then we were told that Amazon has, for $12, it has the newspaper print, yeah, for 500 sheets. So that's a great thing. Okay, next I'm going to pass out a pattern. I drafted this myself, so don't judge on my handwriting. So you can take one or two. There's enough, there should be enough. But so this is my little house pattern that I'm giving out to you today. And this is the house that I used for Peter and for my little cottage here that I made. So I want to walk through piecing now so I can show you every step of what I'm going to do. Okay, so paper bills, sewing scissors. So have a separate set of scissors that's just for cutting out your paper pieces. It doesn't have to be old fancy sewing scissors. It could be, the $1 ones from the dollar store, yeah. But so what we're going to do is we're going to cut out our paper piece pattern by cutting between these two lines. This is our seam allowance. So we do want to sew to the edge, but we don't want to cut through the edge with our rotary cutter at the end. So we're going to cut just inside this outside line. So my scissors were handed down from my husband's great aunt, and they belonged to her bubby, which was her grandma. So they have a little bit of patina. They're not as sharp, but I still wanted to use them because they're special. So they became my paper scissors. Okay. So you can still see I have my whole pattern, and I've just trimmed off that very exterior line, because that's what, when I trim it at the end, I don't want to cut over my paper because it will also dull rotary cutters. Okay. I would normally put a drop of glue, but I didn't put it on the table, so I'm just going to hold it today. But this is where you put a tiny dot of glue, you'd hold your pattern up to the light, and you'd line it up. So this is kind of far for most of you, but I can see that I'm well within this door block. So you want to give yourself that 1/4 inch all the way around. You've definitely filled up the center, but you also have a 1/4 inch. So then I would take, let me explain this part, I forgot. So this is the most difficult part for everybody that I've ever taught, is that the original piece needs to face up. So this is the back of your pattern, and the back of your fabric touch like this, okay? This one doesn't matter, he's brown. But if he had a back, it would be back to back. This is the only piece that we do that with because it's our starting point. Everything else will be like traditional piecing where you right sides together and you fold back, okay? So here's my door piece, and I have him centered so that I know he has a 1/4 inch all the way around. I'm gonna take my next piece, my wall piece, and I'm gonna line him up so that he is on top of the line, because I want him to fold back into section number 2. When I'm lining it up and I'm using the lights, I can see through this paper. This is yellow printer paper, so even white paper, the brown paper is even easier to see. I'm making sure that I leave that 1/4 inch up there, because that's what I'm going to trim after. So I am prepared. So now I'm going to sew all the way across that line between 1 and 2. This sewing machine was a gift from my husband for Christmas. Not 2024, but 2023. Oh, I broke it. Okay, let's see what it can be. Should have tested it first. I'm sewing here fucking. Okay, they are there. Okay, so I will have stitched this across. What I'm gonna do now is on this, see this? I forgot to tell you something else. Shorten your stitch length. And the reason we shorten our stitch length is because we're perforating the paper so that it rips out. Should have mentioned that. That's one of the biggest thing about paper piecing. I don't back stitch. I go slightly past the line. So your next line is going to cover it. It's going to sew over it and it'll hold it down. But so since I have this little perforation where my needle and my thread is, my paper bends there perfectly. So then what I do is I take the add a 1/4 or my regular old ruler, and I line it up against the paper so that I'm hanging over a 1/4 of an inch, and then I trim. Okay, so then now that I've trimmed, I have my perfect seam allowance. You fold your paper back over. and then you fold your back over and just iron it. And there's your piece attached. Does anybody have questions about what I just did? Yes.
Do you set your seam first and then press open, or does anybody can never anywhere?
It doesn't matter because not only are your stitches smaller and holding better, but also it's holding against the paper, it's not gonna move. You're talking about setting it like ironing first so that yeah, you don't need to. I mean, I normally do, but you don't need to. It will hold. Okay? So, that didn't sew because I didn't get my machine to work.
You never should have told us.
Well, because I was going to show you the next piece, but it just fell off. But so for, let me show you the roof. Okay, so pretend I've completed all of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to come up here to the roof. So I want to cover number 7. So what I need to make sure that I do is that I am giving myself a 1/4 inch, and then I'm below it because after I sew, you flip it up. And that is how, yes, that's how you cover. And then the next part would be the diagonal. So I would put mine above and I can see my 1/4 inch. I would sew between them and then I would trim and then I would flip it back and that would cover, give me half of the profile of my roof.
Now, where's the gray piece? Did you trim the gray piece, the corner first?
No,
Okay, so,
I would trim it after I sewed the blue piece
okay.
because I would fold it back and I would do my seam allowance and then iron it over and then it would be, yeah. So you are trimming in between each section, yes. So you place it down with a 1/4 inch. So fold your paper back, trim, and then you'll have your piece. Okay, I know that was confusing because I didn't sew it correctly. I'm trying to look and see. Do I not have it in front of me?
I think when you started, you weren't long enough and
It slid in? Well, it's broken. Yeah, so it's, yeah, I sewed on this all day yesterday, so. The front row is telling my secrets. She knew that I wasn't sewing. I knew too, I'm good at faking it. Fake it till you make it, right? Okay, so let me go over some more complicated things that you might run into as you do foundation paper piecing. I have a pattern here by Kate Basty. She does the Tall Tale books. Can you see that this is not one piece? It's not a straightforward square like this one. So this requires us to paper piece each individually. Or this is also her pattern, this great white shark. So I have an 11-year-old. He's 11 years old right now. He's the one I started sewing for. I only have one child. But he's very much into sharks. Yeah. There are a lot of pieces. So this was one, Janine does a lot of Quilt Art Designs does a lot of very complex. So she usually colors in her patterns. So when you print them out from your computer, you know which color is going where so that they end up the right way. So this is foundation paper pieced, but then so are all these blocks. On your salmon colored paper at the bottom, I wrote during quiet time, Amy Friend. She is responsible for most of the patterns of the quilts that I have. But she has this block that she's quite known for. It's called Tell Me a Story. Tell Me a Story block. And it is a very simple pattern. It's a center that you normally fussy cut, little black triangles, a border and then your background. And she does swaps. Yes, theme swaps. So, for example, there's a shark here with fish around, like feeding frenzy. That's the story. But so I have been in this swap for a while, and I asked all my swap friends to help me make shark blocks. So I was sent almost all of these fabrics. Because if you look, every single one has sharks all the way around. So that was a pretty big, exciting thing to have all my friends help me with that one. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
Are you saying that you paper piece those squares around it as well?
yes, she asked if I paper pieced all the squares around, and I did. All of those are paper pieced. Her face is astonishment. I don't know if astonishment or
The back is clear.
When you do that, do you make your own pattern of a square with the sides, so then you just put the sides on?
are you asking about
Do
the,
those sides on those squares?
no, the sides are in the pattern.
It was in the pattern.
Yes, so it ends up as a 6.5-inch square. She's asking if I added the borders separately. No, it was a square this shape.
Well, I thought that the pieces of the sides were paper piecing, but I thought maybe you drew up the pattern.
No, this is Amy Friend's pattern.
Any
Yes.
friends?
Amy Friend, she's here on the bottom. Her company is called During Quiet Time. Yes, so here's another one that I'd like to show you. You can just stay up here now. So this is my Christmas Tell Me a Story block quilt. These were all swap blocks. Not entirely. I made some of them, and I've obviously made enough to have a whole quilt, but we traded them through the mail. And then I added some elves. These were, again, by Janine, Quilt Art Designs, the same one that did the shark and the dog, or the cat.
The curly toes.
Yes, the elves are very fun. So again, these are how complex you can get. Very complex. Even this guy down here has a pieced candy cane with it. Yeah. So again, I fussy cut every one of the centers, and then we put a Christmas border. So, staying on the Tell Me a Story block theme, I have a quilt in progress to show you. I was telling Tamara that I started these quilts for my nieces and nephews, thank you, when I had 4. And now I have 10 and more coming. So thank goodness for the swaps that I participate in, because I would run out of block ideas. Thank you. So this is obviously for my nephew Caleb. The letters are foundation paper piece, and then these are the Tell Me a Story blocks that I've been swapping. Yes.
Where did you get your letter patterns?
I will have to look it up. No, I don't. It's called My First Alphabet by Diane Bone. I'm gonna pass that to her. She did.
Diane Bone.
Yeah, Bohn. So I'm going to pass this around because I'm gonna have you guys take off the back. No, I'm just kidding. But what I want you to look at on the back, you can take it off to see how each one rips. But I want you to see that the different swap people I did used the brown paper, or somebody used lined school paper. And then some people, somewhere on here is that vellum, right here, the vellum that she was talking about. So you can feel all the different ways that they end up in a block. And just, a lot of people tell me that they don't want to have to take the paper off at the end. It's so hard. This is my favorite part. I'm done and I get to sit in front of the TV and take off the paper. And because I've been working with it and sewing, look, they're already ready to come off. So if you want to go ahead and pass it around and look at the different types of paper.
So you always leave it on until you get off the pattern?
She's asking if I leave on the paper until I have it all together. Yes. Specifically in foundation paper piecing, you're cutting across the grain and things will wiggle and move. So leaving on the paper till the end not only will stabilize your project, but you have a perfect seam allowance right there. So when you have two blocks that are done, and you want to stitch them together, you turn it over, line them up, and you stitch on this line, and you have a perfect seam allowance again. So I think the reason why I love foundation paper piecing is because of those perfect seam allowances and how they come out so well every time. My traditional pieces, my stars don't always have points and they don't always line up. But my foundation paper pieces are always perfect. All right. So this is foundation paper piece cursive. This is by Quiet Play, who's also in Australia. If you want to look her up, she has some fantastic ones.
What was the name of the gal of this one again?
Her company is Quiet Play. I believe her name is Christy Lee. Yeah. So this is another Amy Friend pattern. So you can see, most people don't realize that this is foundation paper pieced. And you could probably do it traditionally pieced, but I just love foundation paper piecing because I love how it matches up and how I just follow the lines and don't have to do so much math. So that's this guy, the satisfaction quilt.
You guys do that too.
Oh, the back. The Mickey's very fun on the back of that one. Thank you. My friends always tell me that I'm the rainbow queen and the kid queen, like, because I like colors and I like animals and I like great things. So, speaking of my friend who called me the rainbow queen, she gave me this. This is something that you can buy sometimes at local cultural stores or online. They are packs of papers already printed, so that if you're worried about the right size printing, if you don't have a good printer that prints well, you can just buy your quilt pack here. So I'll pass this around. You can take a look. This is the woven star. And again, the precision, I would never be able to, personally, I wouldn't be able to accomplish this with traditional piecing. They have it in pineapple blocks too.
And they have log cabin.
And log cabin, I have some of those at home too. Have you ever made a log cabin and it gets a little wiggly and then it's wonky? No more wonkiness, because you will be sewing perfect seam allowances and it's holding all that fabric so that it stays crisp. Yes, thank you for pointing out one of the reasons I love foundation paper piecing. So on the bottom of your sheet again is Amy Friend. She's the one that got me into paper piecing. She was the Tell Me a Story block, and I just went crazy from there. So this is another one of her quilt patterns. Am I doing better this time? The reason I want to show you this one specifically is because if you go onto her blog, which I wrote the blog address down at the bottom, she has this pattern for free for this squirrel. So if you try the house and you are pretty good at it, you are ready to jump in. She has, I wrote it down, she has a seedling, a pumpkin, and a squirrel for free on her site so that you can try foundation paper piecing, some things that are a little bit more challenging before you start buying patterns.
Was everything on that paper?
There is a granny's. Can you please show that quilt again? The far black, yeah, the granny square in the far is the only thing that's not foundation paper pieced on that quilt. The stitches, the spools of thread, the wheat, yes, everything is foundation paper pieced besides the granny block. Granny square. I'm bad. That's a crooked beside me. Okay, so Amy Friend, I know I'm saying her name a lot, I told her too. I was like, I'm gonna talk about you a lot. She has a book called Petal and Stem. And the logic behind this is that you have the petals, which are the flower heads, and the stems, and they're all interchangeable. So this is the Whimsy Garden quilt from that book. So I got to choose the flower heads and the stems that I wanted and make my own garden. And then, oh, sorry, I have petals. Grass. Here's the seedling block that I was just telling you about that she has free on her website. She, not for free, but she has also the watering can. And in this petal and stem book, she also has all the creatures that go in the garden. She has snails, frogs, ants, caterpillars, turtles, butterfly. So it just really gives you the ability to be creative and kind of, yeah. So one of the things you'll see, and this is true with traditional piecing too, is that a lot of the blocks are common sizes, so 6.5. So then everything is 6.5, and you just plug in the flower head, the stem, the creature that you want. Yeah. Thank you. So I heard one of our sponsors for the prizes is Ollie and Evie, and they did this quilt block swap 2 years ago. This is the kaleidoscope block. This can be traditionally pieced, but of course I choose foundation paper piecing. And when you're doing a block swap, it's very helpful to do foundation paper piecing because as long as everybody measures and make sure that their blockers are exactly the right size before they start, everybody's block will finish the same. I love swaps, but I've been in some where you get, yeah, they're a 1/4 inch too small all the way around and they're just not gonna fit. So that's one of my favorite things about foundation paper piecing: precision, complexity, and the ability to do accurate swaps. Okay, does anybody have any questions for
Will
me?
you cover a little bit on how you choose how big of a piece of fabric to cut for your piece? Because when you sew and then you flip, especially angles and triangles, that can be really tricky sometimes knowing how big of a piece do I need to make sure that it covers.
I'm being asked how to ensure that the piece I'm choosing is big enough to cover the piece that I want to cover.
You know, without having a ton of waste.
Yes.
How do you decide
So-
what size to cut that?
So these will be straightforward, right? Easy. They're just rectangles. But when it gets really tricky is odd shapes, triangles, pieces that fold back at an angle. So what we can do is we can line it up. So I'm looking from the back so that I can see my 1/4 inch. And then I fold it back a 1/4 inch to make sure that it covers. One of the things I do to alleviate waste is use a really big piece and then just trim it afterwards to make sure so that I'm only cutting what I need. Sometimes they are very tricky though.
Patterns will tell you what size to cut.
Some patterns, like for the Tell Me a Story blocks, you will, because those are pretty like regular size and multiple, but sometimes you just have to wing it.
So now those ones that are like that, you're gonna, not like the square one where you didn't trim it first, just trim that one as soon as you get done and then. just
Yep,
the other
so
one on.
I want it to cover this space above.
Okay.
So I'm making sure that I have it. I would sew along the line. I would flip back the paper first,
Okay.
and then I would trim to the 1/4 inch, and then I'll flip it over because then it'll be sewn down and covered and have time.
And then the other piece will just sew right on top of it, like the
Yeah.
next piece, and then you'll trim.
So you're trimming as you go, so you're not gonna have a whole bunch of fabric underneath. But yes, you will sew over the next one, and then the next one that you trim, will trim this one with it because it doesn't make sense, but it will as you go. It will trim itself to all the proper
So I'm just in order of the numbers.
in order of the numbers.
So I think I had some seed showing through on one that I did.
That's what yes, so his mouth is showing. So that means that we didn't get the whole portion of that section covered. Yes, yes.
So I tried paper pieces before, and my frustration is when I'm tearing off the paper, it pulls my threads out.
Did you shorten your stitch length?
I did.
What kind of paper? She's telling me that when she finished and she took out the paper, it ripped out her stitching. So what kind of paper did you use? Printer paper.
Yeah, and I just know, is there like a trick? Do you spray it, get it wet? Does that take it off? I mean, like, is there, those of you who, because I gave up after that one piece, I thought, I hate this so much. Because as I pull it, the paper's just, yeah.
Do you have a suggestion?
There's two things that I found online when I was looking at it. One is to score the paper with a pen,
Okay, score the paper with a pen
and the other is to spray it with water.
or to spray it with water. I haven't had an issue. If I did, I think I would shorten my stitch length even more because that perforation is what makes it, you can hear that sound as you're taking. Yes. Might be a thread tension issue. Okay. Yeah.
Well, and you do have to be a little bit careful on the edge. You can't just rip, make sure you fold it like you mentioned or crease it really good.
Yes, so she's saying folding or creasing it will help it rip off, and you're correct. So when we perforate, when we sew, and then we fold it back to trim our 1/4 inch, that folding and it already being perforated usually helps mine to come off pretty easy. Yes.
Your name tag.
Oh, thank you.
You do, with that paper piecing all your little.
She's asking about my name tag, and yes, all of these triangles at the bottom are foundation paper piece. I created my own little pattern. I just drew triangles. Thank you. I'm a member of the Behind the Seams Quilt Guild in Rigby, and this is my guild name tag. Do I have any more questions? Okay, thank you. Yes.
You love puzzles?
I don't love puzzles. Okay, so here's the thing. My mom loves puzzles, and I've tried to teach her, and she can't do it. She can't even get the first piece on. And I do not like puzzles. I like the puzzles that stay done, because my mom will make a puzzle and put it away, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you spent all that time. But so no, they don't necessarily go hand in hand. But I do consider them puzzles because a lot of times you're trying to figure out how that goes.
So did you have a pattern for that one?
I did have a pattern for this one. This one's actually you can find online. I'm pretty sure it's kitchen table quilting, and it's called the kaleidoscope block. So I will be here on March 6th, which is a Thursday. I had a paper somewhere. So somebody remind, yes, I am going to be teaching hands-on foundation paper piecing at the Busy Hands Club here at the library. So on Thursday, March 6th from 1 to 2:30. Yes. So if you have a foundation paper piecing pattern that you're working on, yeah, I was told that somebody has one that they need to get accomplished. If you want to bring back your house and work on it for the very first time with me, if you have a complex one or you just want to watch us sew and figure it out, please come. I would love to see you all and to work hands-on. I know it was quite confusing watching me not actually sew, but I promise it will make more sense when we sew together. Do I have any other questions? Yes.
Is there a charge for the?
No, there is no charge. It's kind of like an open sew. So because we will be working on foundation paper piecing, but there'll be other people knitting and crocheting and doing whatever they want. Yeah. All right. So at the bottom, at the top, I included my email. You can email me if you have questions. You can email me a picture if you get a block completed, because I would love to see that. And I'm also very big on Instagram, and you can watch me foundation paper piece on there too. So that's, yeah. If you guys have any other questions that you didn't get answered today, feel free to contact me. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Yes. Thread and fabric into quilt. What's your superpower?
I turn thread and fabric into quilts. What's your superpower? I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you all in March.